Welcome to All Clear, the podcast that takes you beyond the rails. Brought to you by the team at Australian-bred, this podcast dives into the stories, the people and the horses shaping our sport. Whether you're a seasoned competitor or simply love the thrill of the clear round, All Clear delivers the conversations that matter. Hit subscribe and join us for a fresh perspective on the sport you love. Chris Burton is one of Australia's most accomplished equestrian athletes. Known internationally for his success at the highest levels of eventing and jumping, Chris began riding as a child and went on to build an extraordinary career that has included Olympic medals and a reputation as one of the most respected Australian horsemen. After many years based overseas, Chris has returned to Australia with his wife Bec to begin a new chapter, and I'm delighted to have Chris as my guest this evening. Welcome to All Clear, Chris.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me on.
Before we get to the current day, can we just go a little bit back in time? And I'd love to know more about how horses first came into your life.
Oh, that's a good question. I grew up on a grain and cattle farm on the Darling Downs in Queensland, and so there was always horses on the place. My grandfather had horses. My mother is a fantastic equestrian, and so she made sure to get my brother and I riding from an early age, and we'd help to muster the cattle, and riding is one of the things that we did.
So then from there, you just started to get into competitions and things? Like, did jumping and eventing come along quite early for you?
I remember a pony club started up in our local hamlet, Brimaroo, so that was really exciting. My auntie was into eventing, and do you know what it really was? Was the Australian success in Barcelona, I think, in the sport of eventing that got me in wanting to jump things. I saw people riding horses at an Olympic, and I just thought that was too cool.
Yeah, and from there, you obviously competed a fair bit in Australia, and then you made the decision to go overseas. When and why did you make that decision in the first place?
Look, I didn't necessarily want to. I had a good team of horses and riders, horses and owners here in Australia. And then it was around 2011, and I said to my owners, look, I want to go to the UK and I want to try and, become a successful global eventing rider. And to my astonishment, they all supported me. So I landed there with 6 very good eventing horses and had success straight away, more or less.
And where were you based predominantly when you were in the UK?
I set myself up with Sam Griffith. He had become a very good friend over that time, but he was doing a good job with managing his business and riding. And so I sort of learnt a lot from him, really, about how to go about it before I was in Surrey. And then in the end, we were down at an amazing place in Dorset, Teddington Equestrian.
How long in total were you over there?
My wife and I argue about this, but 15 years or so.
Yeah. So you obviously had Paris and great success in Paris, and then the decision was made. Well, I imagine the decision was made before Paris, but you've decided to come back to Australia. That must have been a pretty tough decision, I can imagine, after 15 years in the UK. What drove that decision for you?
The decision to come home was not tough at all. I always got very homesick. We'd have Christmas here with the family, and then I'd be devastated to hop back on the plane and go back into a British winter. It really wasn't a tough decision to come home. The act of moving home was tough. We sold a lot of horses, we said goodbye to friends, and having a culture shock in your own country is a strange thing. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be living the Australian life, and more than anything, my wife's Australian, and we wanted our children to grow up here for no other reason than it's a fantastic place to grow up.
You said it was a bit of a culture shock to come back to Australia. What was it in particular that felt so strange?
It wasn't that much of a culture shock. It's just you presume you know your country when you call yourself Australian, and you are Australian. But 15 years is a long time away. People change and things change, and there was little things like I noticed that the country had become a lot more civilized, which is good. There's certainly a lot more movement around the woke and PC movement. So some of it was very different to the Australia that I left. However, saying that, it's still fantastically governed country, and it's a wonderful place to be.
What were your thoughts about how the equestrian scene might have changed in those 15 years that you were predominantly overseas?
Yeah, so that's been a pleasant surprise. Obviously, when I'd come home, I would go to, shows like Equitana. I'd go to shows like Adelaide, and so I wasn't totally out of the loop. But it's been fun to watch the progression and the development of Australian equestrian in my time away. Certainly, I can't speak too much for dressage and other equestrian sports, but the sport of show jumping is very strong, seems stronger than ever.
And quite early on, you were down at Jumping with the Stars as a young horse judge. What did you think about that with the young horses?
Yeah, it was actually my first time attending that show, but it was very well run. And there's some really exciting young horses in this country, and there's some very good riding going on. We're seeing well-organised shows, good prize money, and very good venues, good ground. So it's in a good way, I have to say.
So let's talk about the new chapter for you. So you've got the business, Deo Futura. Can you tell us what the vision was behind that and where the name came from as well?
Well, the name's quite fun. I was lucky enough to have, like every successful equestrian, I suspect, one particular horse who absolutely was the making of me. And he was a thoroughbred who was a very careful jumper, and he jumped in a very classical way. And he took me from pony club to 5-star, really. And so that horse was called Deo Futura, and that's what we've done is named the sort of breeding business Deo Futura, which means, Deo is Latin or Italian for God, so it's future God. So that's quite fun for us. Yeah, look, we have some lovely horses that we've set about acquiring over our time in Europe. I always enjoy looking at the breeding, and these stallions, we picked on their breeding as well as their type and jump, and I think they'll make excellent additions to the wonderful breeding that's already going on here in Australia.
Yeah, so you've got the 3 stallions. Can you tell us about each of those?
So the oldest is a Coleman. He's a very nice, typical Holsteiner. He's very laid back, very easygoing. They're all wonderful nature, actually, which I think is just luck. I don't believe it's the way we're handling them. They're just lovely natured animals. And he's breeding really well. He's Coleman Diamond, and then Kadam. So he's making good horses, and he's making them good, strong Holsteiners with a lot of scope and a lot of jump. The second one is the Cornmeal-Foe. He's actually not been as popular with the breeding, and I'm not sure why. He's Cornmeal-Foe, Carano, and then Sir Solstakovich, a thoroughbred. I think he'll make good eventing horses as well. He jumps in a very good way, moves very nicely. But I suspect he's going to win a lot of classes. He's a very good jumper and a lot of fun. And the young one is, you're not meant to have baby, but the 5-year-old is a Chuckfly Stalipso for pleasure. And he's just a dream. He's a lovely natured thing. He's a very exciting horse for the future of show jumping, and I'm really enjoying him, as I am all of them.
Do you put a lot of weight on the temperament of the stallions?
Good question, Joe. We've all had, we've all seen or known of stallions that are particularly rowdy or particularly difficult to handle, and these 3 are just gentlemen. You wish sometimes they would be a little bit more stallion-like. They're so easy. So, I mean, for what we're trying to do, where we're selling them as breeding stallions and I'm promoting them as performance horses, it's perfect. But it's just luck. We didn't pick them on their temperament. We could see they were good-natured, and we knew the breeding very well. And that's all we sort of had to go on when we bought them at the 3-year-old auction.
You are competing on them. So is that a balance for you between the breeding side of the business and the competition side?
It does get a little bit tough on them, I think, and a little bit tough on me as the jockey in the breeding season when they're getting a lot of calls for stud. Hopefully, I think, a lot of good-natured stallions can cope and do it really easily. There's some arguments to say the breeding stallions are better off kept in work, so they're not so energetic or randy all the time.
Yeah. And did you bring some mares over as well, or is that not part of the program for you?
No, just stallions at this stage. I I'd love to start looking around for more horses, and I've always got an eye out, but I'm in the throes of building our house at the moment and thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That's a challenge, though, isn't it?
That is a challenge. That's a fun challenge.
And you've been doing a little bit of coaching as well since you've been back?
Yeah, of course. Look, we've been lucky enough to have some really nice new clients come along, and I'm enjoying helping them. And there's quite a lot of talented young riders in this country, and Alex Jang is one of them, and he's incredibly talented. He sort of rides with a lot of feel, and that's something you can only either have or learn on your own, really. So coaching him has been really enjoyable.
And you're building this venture with your wife, Rebecca. What strengths does Bec bring to the business?
Well, it's her business, really. I work for her. So if anyone knows our relationship, she has me completely infantilized. I simply couldn't function without her. Rebecca has 2 degrees, and I'm sad to say that she's wasted them working for me. Now, when I say that, she's 100% the reason for my success and our success, because she's uber organized. She's a very good businesswoman. She's 2 steps ahead on everything, and at the moment she's looking after our 2 children beautifully, project managing our house builder, servicing our clients, then running our business.
Right, so you've just got to ride the horses, basically, and do as you're told.
There you go. That's right. So I owe it to her to ride them as well as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you hope that the business will be, say, if you look in 5 years' time from now?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I always fantasized about slowing down when I get older, but I'm not sure when you consider older is. So I always thought it'd be nice just to have 3 or 4 horses and teach a little bit and have a property that looks out over our horses and we can see them in the paddocks. We have a property where I can look over the horses and see them in the paddocks. We certainly have only 3 or 4 horses at the moment, but unfortunately when you're wired as a high achiever, you can't help but want to get more and more horses.
A quick shout out to Divas Beverages, who continue to back our sport. Their VCAT vodka isn't just popular, it's award-winning, Australian-made and crafted with the same care and commitment we see in every great horse and rider partnership. So when you see VCAT behind the bar or on the shelf, remember they're part of the reason we can keep having these conversations. Now back to our guest. You were recently at Showcase of Showjumping. What did you think of that show?
Isn't it fantastic? What a wonderful thing that group have done at SJA. It's as good a show as you'll find anywhere in the world. The jumps are fantastic. The course builders and course designers are always immaculate. And that ground is truly staggering. I was watching it the other day. You almost don't need to wear studs, which is something I always, said you should never do, but it's never slipping. It gives the horses so much confidence and they're jumping so well off it. So look, if I only go to SJA, I'll be able to produce my horses very nice.
Absolutely. And I hear that from a lot of people as well. So we did talk briefly about the sport in Australia. I guess I just want to get your opinion. You've been overseas, you've seen the top level of competition. Obviously, you've competed and done so well at Olympic Games and other high-level competitions. What do you honestly think that where we're at in Australia with jumping? And I obviously appreciate that eventing has been a big part of your career, but you're just a keener show jumper, I know that. So where do you think, from a jumping perspective, we currently sit?
That's a good question. I mean it very sincerely when I say I believe the sport of show jumping seems to be very strong. Certainly compared to when I left, certainly compared to, even other nations in other parts of the world. Now, the sport of show jumping is very popular because it's telegenic. It fits in a small space. It's easy for people to understand. There's no subjectivity to it, unlike some of the other sports, equestrian. I think, and I hope, right, but it's an exciting time for Australian equestrian going into the Brisbane Olympics. And I think we should grab the bull by the horns and give it our best shot to not only represent our country well, but represent ourselves well and aim for the podium. Let's aim high.
It is an incredible opportunity. Do you think that we can do that with Australian-bred horses as well?
Well, that's an easy question, yes, because the standard in Australian breeding in the 20 years I've been, 20 or 30 years I've been in professional equestrian has gone through the roof. Everything I see now or ask about, it's a lovely looking jumper, has immaculate breed, and not just the stallions on the dam side as well. So absolutely. And, it's hard because we're geographically challenged, right? We're on the other side of the world. And so we're trying to compare apples and oranges when we say, how would we have gone in that 4-star or how would we have gone in that 5-star? But on the other hand, Aussies are incredibly down on themselves when there is a really good performance. They're so quick to be overly judging and say, oh, it wouldn't have stood up against an international performance. And I don't know if that's true. So look, all we can do is keep looking forward and, keep trying to build the sport as a group and work together to make the sport stronger and challenge each other. And who knows what might come with Brisbane around the corner.
A common theme that does come up in these conversations, and I don't know, maybe I've asked the question too many times, but is about the time allowed on course, because that does seem to be one of the things that challenges us when we go over to Europe or the US is time, not necessarily time allowed, but the time aspect of the competition is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yes, of course. Look, and it's possible that if you are lucky enough to have a 5-star horse with tons of scope, you have a big chance that it's a little bit slow across the ground, and making the time in a 3 and 4-star in anywhere in the rest of the world might be hard. Now, I don't think there's a lot we can do about that, and you have to be fair to the course designers coming out here. Bear in mind, if you're in Holland or Belgium, for example, in the hub of the sport, and you're putting on a 3-star show, you're going to have 150 horses trying to qualify for that Grand Prix. So you can't go any higher than 150 or 155 depending on the class. So bear in mind, it's the course designer's only chance to try and weed out the class is to make the time tight on purpose, and that's about all they can do. And that's just one of those things that goes with the sport. That means if you're lucky enough to have a horse that's fast across the ground, then you will be easily inside the time. Otherwise, you have to be very clever. You have to ride very well, and I think that's a wonderful challenge. Take an inside turn if it's available, or take up some strides. When we're seeing things done really unconventionally with this beautiful United Touch getting around. So see that as strength, as an opportunity for the talented riders in Australia, not a problem.
Yeah. You mentioned like the young riders and the talent, I guess, that we've got coming up through now in the young rider ranks in Australia. What do you think that they should be focusing on if they've got ambitions for Brisbane for 2032?
There's lots to focus on. If you're an equestrian, you've got many things to focus on. Very broad question, but if you can draw any inspiration from this, all you actually need is to be driven enough. The sport of equestrian belongs to the person with the most tenacity. It's tough. So the person that can get up and dust themselves off and go to the next one is the person that will win the sport of equestrian. You have to very simply wake up in the morning and think, how do I improve my riding today? How do I improve my team today? And whatever that means.
Another topic that comes up a little bit for us is one of the biggest challenges we have in Australia in the jumping is the commercial support. Have you got any thoughts about how we attract more owners, investors and sponsors into the sport in Australia?
Sure. Look, I hear that all the time, and I am actually, this is something I'm very interested in particular, helping show organisers and helping, riders with this kind of thing. And it's tough, right? Olympics provides an opportunity. The LA provides an opportunity. Brisbane provides an opportunity because people like being involved in the Olympics. Like it's a fantastic, it itself is an incredible commercial venture. You know, it's an amazing thing. The way people get so excited about the Olympics, it's a great thing. As for what, why does a billionaire miner give a heap of money to swimming and not equestrian? You have to remember a lot of Olympic sports are not the most popular, but therefore it relies on the sport and their organising committees to make something that is exciting, that can be sold, that can progress and become a wonderful thing. So it means having good venues, having good facilities available for entertainment that people can have a great time, and then the knock-on effect will start to come. And from what I'm seeing, if we're running shows like I'm seeing down in Victoria and the ones in Northbury that I'm seeing, there's no reason why that can't continue to grow stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I always wondered if it's partly because, in Australia we have so many national sports, don't we? We've got the cricket and we've got the AFL and the NRL. Whereas in Europe, they don't have those other sports really to compete with, do they, so much? Except soccer, maybe.
I think they do. Got to also look per capita. I refer to that corner of Belgium and Holland and Germany where the sport of show jumping is incredibly strong, and it really is. You also have to look at what else is happening and per capita basis. This is when you fly over that area of Brussels and Cologne, etc. It's an incredibly populated area. There's buildings and lights and cars everywhere. So we're a small nation, but we're a strong fighting nation. So and that's what I think is so lovely about going head to head on the international stage. We have just as much chance as anyone.
Horizon Show Jumps was founded by people who genuinely love the sport, and that shows in everything they do. What started back in 2013 as a search for better quality jumps has grown into one of Australia's leading suppliers, with their fences now seen at major events like Melbourne Royal, Equitana and AusChamps. Horizon specialise in custom-made jumps for private arenas, eye-catching sponsor fences that really make brands pop, and a full range of hire equipment with designs that are regularly refreshed so courses always feel professional and current. And now Horizon are also building high-quality stables, carrying that same attention to detail and understanding of horses across your whole setup. So if you're looking to lift your arena, your barn or your next event, head to horizonshowjumps.com.au. And now back to our guest. I guess with Brisbane coming up, or we should probably call it Toowoomba, and that's close to your starting place, isn't it? Toowoomba, you're from that area originally.
That is very exciting for me. So I've been asked to be the ambassador for the Toowoomba Show Committee to sort of help guide them through it, if you like. And I just think it's the coolest thing ever that, the place where I was inspired to do eventing and show jumping, and where I did my first show jumping competition, is going to host the Olympic Games. It still blows my mind. But we will be left with a fantastic, yet another legacy venue like SIAC. And, hopefully it means that we have a chance to keep the quarantine venue there and bring in overseas competitors and host 5 stars in our very own country.
Is there anything front of mind for you that you think we need to be doing as a sport on leading up to Brisbane? Is there anything in particular you think where we might be missing the mark that we could improve on, or just what we've talked about already?
My thing has been turning to the private sector, not continually going back to the government and looking at the Sport Commission for funding. I think we need to turn to the private sector, and then we need a clear reason for what we're going to spend that money, if any, on. And I think the simplest thing that a sponsor should take pride in helping the sport of equestrian is helping us with our geographic challenge. So a pot of money that means you can fly your horse to go to the World Cup final. You can go and represent us in a dressage class in Amsterdam. You can go and fly to do Aachen or Badminton or Burleigh or something like that, but then come back. So the funds available that people are paying into where you have been selected by, and I think there should be a lot more pressure put on the selectors to choose the young riders or to choose the riders and horses and say, congratulations, you've won the grant. You're off to this show. Good luck. You have to come back. Can sell your horse if an offer comes along, but you have to pay the money back if you sell the horse. Very simple. It's all really easy. What we tend to do is we tend to just see them go overseas and either lose them because they don't make it on an international stage, lose them to the home sport of Australia, or they sell their horse and then that's it. They're not heard of ever again.
Yeah. So make it possible for people to go over there, get the experience that they need, but bring their horse back and taking up again here and bring that experience back with them and feed that back into the community.
And just make that pond smaller, and that the hard thing for High Performance Australia is that we have riders based in America. We have riders based in Ireland and France and Germany and Europe. And so we need to not be exclusive. We need the high performance program to be on the job. We need the selectors to be accountable for their position and recognise that it might be flying a rider from America to Europe and back, with this fantasy fund that we still don't have. But if there are any billionaires out there that feel like, or even millionaires that feel like putting some money in the pot, give us a call.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be ready for that for sure. So for you personally, what keeps you motivated still in this part of your career? Because you've had so much success. Is it still as exciting for you?
Yeah, of course it is. Look, the answer to that question is that I kind of took a different path. So I always enjoyed my show jumping. I show jumped here in Australia as well as evented, and then I was full time eventing until 2019. I started getting a team of jumpers and I ended up doing both. And then after Tokyo, I was just full time. I gave up eventing. So that's actually kept me really inspired and kept me really in it because I desperately want to represent Australia in the sport of show jumping again, if I should be so lucky. And yeah, I think that it's a fun sport and something I enjoy doing.
Well, you were pretty close at Paris because you were on that list, weren't you? But you still did okay.
No, that was yeah. So we were the reserve horse over in Jardy. Just for anyone that knows, Paris is just over the road, and that was a lovely distraction because at the Olympics it's so easy to just burn nervous energy by being there while the eventing was going on, and then I would go over and. Of course, everything's organised. So a chauffeur, a car, someone drives you over to a horse that was beautifully groomed by our wonderful grooms, and I got to ride Hazy around over there in the afternoon. Just a fantastic distraction.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So we've got a tradition on the podcast that each guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who they are going to be. And your question, I think we may have already answered it, but your question comes from Chrissy Harris. And Chrissy would like to know, do you think that we can actually produce a Brisbane Games horse in Australia?
And Chrissy didn't know that it was me coming on next.
She had no idea that it was you. I wouldn't tell her.
So I have to ask a question as well, but does it have to be equestrian?
No, it doesn't have to be a question. No, it doesn't have to be. It's got to be fairly polite, but it's, the kids listen to this, but it's, that doesn't have to be a question, but you got to answer that question for Chrissy first, though. Tell her what you think.
So, Chrissy, it's a good question. Yes, I look, I'm optimistic. I'm a yes man, but so shoot me. That's my biggest character fault. I think a champion can come from anywhere, and we have just as much chance of breeding a champion. We have just as much chance of getting one of these talented kids that I'm seeing everywhere these days on the back of it, and a big chance, we're a strong nation, a big chance that they find a way of keeping that horse, not selling a horse. And yes, I genuinely believe that we can do that come Brisbane.
I'm actually going to throw in a question of my own. If you could look back and give your 18-year-old self some advice in hindsight, what would it be?
Oh, do you know, I flip on this one. I've had this one before because it's easy to say just slow down and enjoy it, but that's a projection of me now. But I certainly I've said this before. It's just look, I'd go and do it all again and enjoy it because it's a hell of a ride, and I've just been so lucky in my life and in my career that I'm very grateful.
So, do you have a question for our next guest?
And are they specifically show jumping
Yeah,
audience, or is it
generally
a
show
question?
jumping. We've snuck a few eventers in there, but we're definitely predominantly show jumping. And there may not be riders because there could be officials as well. And I actually don't know who our
But
next one
they,
is going to
yeah.
be. So,
Okay, well, forgive me if you've had this question before, but of all the beautiful, famous, let's say, I was going to say show jumping horses, but let's say famous horses that we know in sport horses, and they can be from any nation, which one best describes you?
all right, fantastic. I'll be sure to pass it on. Thanks heaps for your time today, Chris. I do appreciate you putting the time aside to chat with me. And I'm sure people are going to love listening
Lovely
to
speak.
it.
I hope so. Good
Thanks.
on you, Joe.